I'm Philip Gardner, and I'd like to invite you to journey with me into the heart of an ancient and sacred mystery that truly lies within ourselves. This is a journey of ages, and one that transcends ordinary human thought. It is the secret at the very heart of the Temple of Solomon. Gnosis means knowledge of the most esoteric kind. This is the story that has been kept from the ears of mankind for too long. It is a truth hidden beneath the layers of religious deceit for centuries. This is the truth behind the world's most infamous secret societies, including the Knights Templar. It is the revelation of the arcane secrets of mankind and the amazing discovery of the secret of Solomon's Temple. You cannot live life until you have Gnosis. Many people have no understanding of what Gnosis means. Others think that it simply means knowledge and leave it at that. Yet there is a deeper meaning attached to this word. It is a word that gave rise to the title Gnostic, or one who has this special knowledge. They practiced a spirituality that was distinctly more Eastern than the Western version of Christianity we see around us today. The term Gnosis, in truth, is the direct mystical experience of the divine in the self. It is the realization of the true nature of ourselves and cannot be discerned through intellectual dogma and doctrine. For whoever does not know self does not know anything, but whoever knows self already has acquired knowledge about the depth of the universe. So were the words of Christ according to St. Thomas, and these few words reveal the depth of the belief in this peculiar and seemingly difficult to comprehend system. It seems we are being told by the ancients that the most important place to search for truth, the divine, and for ultimate knowledge of the universe is within ourselves. The goal of this Gnosis is to discover this true inner reality, which also gives us an insight into the very universe. I shall give you what no eye has seen, what no ear has heard, and what no hand has touched, and what has never arisen in the human mind. These were the words attributed to Christ, and what we shall discover is that this Christ of the Gospels is nothing other than the true inner reality of ourselves. The words of Christ match those of other leading historical avatars because it is a kind of archetype within each one of us in a very quantum way. If we can obtain the wisdom and knowledge of this true Christ, then we shall be able to see what no eye has seen, and hear what no ear has heard. We shall truly touch what has never arisen in the human mind, because what we shall see is much more than just the creation of this human mind of ours. Because of mankind's attempts at manifesting the mystical into the physical world, he has created mysteries for the rest of us. The secret knowledge presented here would have resulted in my own tormented death at the fiery stake had I written so blatantly in previous centuries. Only those who already knew the secrets had the eyes to see and the ears to hear. Men whom we would today class as alchemists and occultists hid their understanding behind language and imagery that was multi-layered. In order for us to fully comprehend exactly what this Gnosis is, we must first understand the background and history to this hidden world. We must come to an understanding that our present orthodox history is basically incorrect. Over the course of the last few centuries, there has been an ongoing rewriting of history by those in power, both ecclesiastical and political. As any good historian will tell you, the history of the world has been written mainly by the victors. The victory could be a military conquest, a political or religious campaign. Either way, the losers are generally silenced and eradicated from their history books, or even vilified and made to look foolish. When we are told that the war was won by the glorious and good, we must be wary of what we read. The same is true when we read of the supposed victories of, say, Christianity. We read, for instance, that St. Patrick went to Ireland and defeated the serpents, eradicating the country of all the indigenous snakes. This is blatantly not true, as Ireland has no snakes. In fact, what this little story is really referring to is the existence of a serpent-worshipping cult in Ireland from prehistoric times that were replaced by the new cult of Christianity, and this is linked to the worship of what we shall discover to be the wisdom of the serpent. It also refers to the fact that St. Patrick overcame the power of the serpent and therefore mastered it. The snake is intricately linked with magic and mythology in almost every culture. It is seen as the personification of wisdom and goodness, and alternatively as the personification of evil, thus revealing the duality implicit to its nature and to the nature of the energy serpents known as the Ida and Pingala, which traverse the spine in the Hindu tradition known as the Kundalini. This Kundalini explains one of the reasons why the serpent or snake was used in all wisdom literature, as the Kundalini was the expression of the path to true wisdom. Its dual nature as both the cure and the killer is almost unique. This internal union has been depicted throughout history as the sexual union, and eventually came through in history as the alchemist's hermaphrodite or androgyny figure. Some say that originally the snake was the symbol of the virgin goddess, giving birth to the cosmos unaided by any male principle, an almost androgynous element of creation, the coiled or spiral symbol of the serpent representing her vagina. In Egyptian mythology, the pyramid texts speak of the snake as celestial, earthly, and subterranean, a trinity aspect. As the divine phallus, the serpent was in perpetual copulation with Mother Earth, and represented the axis mundi, passing through all three realms of hell, earth, and heaven. All of this is symbolic of opening up a pathway in ourselves to allow an internal dialogue between our lower nature and our higher senses or consciousness. Now we must turn to the enlightenment experience. This experience, we must understand, comes directly from the internal, chemical, electrical, biological reactions to our own thought processes. It is, in essence, something we can create ourselves, and this is the divinity within ourselves, spoken of, albeit often in hidden language, by many ancient and not so ancient writers. The early messiahs were gurus and shamans who understood how the world worked in their own unique way. They received their knowledge via the trance state and this inner enlightenment experience. This energy is nothing more than the serpent fire, solar force or pranic energy of the serpent-worshipping mystics of the world. Without the energy of the serpent fire, there could be no Gnosis or so we are told, but we must also control it. And yet what is this energy? And have scientists ever discovered it, or even looked for it? Over the course of human history, there have been thousands of individuals who have claimed to have experienced enlightenment or illumination, giving rise to the term shining as far back in history as we care to go. If it is true that mankind across the world and across time has been having these experiences, and they are very real experiences, then it is true to state that they must be brought on by some kind of energy. This energy is both the electrical charge within the nervous system to the brain and the chemical and biological reactions within our brain, brought on by numerous methods of meditation, prayer and dervish. These ancient methods were discovered over the course of tens of thousands of years and have been perfected by initiates and adepts in many cults and creeds. The methods do work. They do create altered states of awareness via the electrical, biological and chemical reactions that they generate. The question scientists, among them psychologists, are asking is simply whether the reactions are purely biological functions, accidentally discovered by mankind, or are they truly mystical and spiritual capacities of the higher self? The answer to this can in the end only lay with the individual, but we may have other insights into the whole scientific element of the process by digging a little deeper. In ancient Sanskrit there is a word named as sunya, and simply put it means zero and is related to a modern concept known as the void. How is this ancient metaphysical concept of nothingness related to a modern quantum world we call the void? And how is this related to the ultimate knowledge of mankind? Imagine, if you will, a large sea or lake. We know in our Western world that this body of water is made up of tiny molecules, which themselves are made up of atoms. Inside these amazing atoms we discover a mini solar system, not dissimilar to the solar systems we see ourselves. This mini solar system is made up of a nucleus, which is equated with the Sun, with electrons revolving around it like planets. The space between these mini stars and planets is the science of the void, and is no different to the void of the space between the Sun and its orbiting planets. In actual fact, the majority of both the mini solar system in the atom and that of the macrocosmic solar system is made up of this void. Incredibly, if we were to travel even further into the centre of the nucleus, we would find exactly the same thing again. Well, what does this show? So far, and for the relationship to the ancient teachings, it reveals to us the truths behind the concepts of as above, so below, from the infamous Hermetic emerald tablet attributed to Hermes, and well known in the occult and alchemical world. This void or 0 point energy is in fact the substance of thought. It is the quantum realm of our real consciousness. Through the entanglement of particles known today as quantum entanglement, these thoughts can indeed through modern science be entangling with other particles, and hence what we have is what the alchemists called the universal mind, or in popular terms, God. The world of the mystic and the enlightenment process is nothing more than the accessing of this universal mind via the ability to be conscious of the point of quantum entanglement, to be aware of the unconscious world and the numerous connections between our mind at the subatomic level and the subatomic universe. The methods employed by the adept would heighten the state of awareness of this quantum world internally, and due to the very nature of the process, the mystic comes back with visions which are on the one hand archetypal and on the other unusual. It is archetypal because it is seen the same the world over. It is unusual in the fact that the ordinary mind cannot comprehend what the non-ordinary mind has seen. What the mystic, whether Hindu, Muslim Sufi, Christian Gnostic or alchemist, is revealing is the human interpretation of a very real and scientifically theoretical quantum world of the unconscious. This experience is what they termed the real self. The experience of our own self-consciousness remains a universal constant, just as the ancients believed Christ is all and in all. The truth is that the shaman who led the process were finding ways to higher consciousness, to be closer to their gods. This knowledge was passed on to the tribe where required, through visual arts and in practical healing techniques. All the things that man has seen through this process are therefore nothing but an illusion created only within the brain. But this theory neglects the quantum side of existence, that all things are connected, that all is one, and that everything depends upon everything else. So too does our mind depend upon the universal mind. There can be no doubt that various drugs bring on a process known to the mystics as the Enlightenment. There can equally be no doubt that these processes can also be brought on via physical and mental actions, creating neuron transmissions which affect our thoughts and release chemical hormones. But all of this is simply reducing the process down to a scientifically physical, biological and chemical action. The question is not how the experience is brought on. The question is what truth is there to it? Is this process a truth of human evolution? And is this process being caused by the union of ourselves with the collective superconscious state or the universal mind? Are we in fact creating our own evolution in a quantum universe? What the evidence does show is that subjects do experience a great light or shining, just as the ancients have stated on numerous occasions, and we now know to be part of the true enlightenment experience. The experience cannot be the result of man's searching for eternal life, as each culture would bring about different results. This is then a result of human evolution, whether the simple biological, genetic and universal process of evolution, or via a co-evolved nature with the very existence of another quantum dimension. This would explain the serpent image, which has been seen both as the double helix of DNA and as energy waves. Either way, the wavy line, physically manifested on this level of existence as the snake, is a universal image underlying the very basic levels of existence itself. We have seen how the Kundalini energy of the Hindu prana and the scientist's zero-point energy has also been described as serpent fire by others. The brazen serpent of Moses is portrayed as a flaming serpent, and Jesus is equated to this serpent. The brazen serpent of Moses is nothing more than the power of the healing Kundalini seen in the Hindu tradition. So what we have here is a belief in the healing serpent energy rising up a pole or spine that spans the period between the Old Testament and the New. But more than that, this serpent healer is there right at the start too, in Genesis. And the woman said to the serpent, We may eat the fruit of the trees of the garden, but of the fruit of the tree which is in the midst of the garden, God has said, You shall not eat it, nor shall you touch it lest you die." Then the serpent said to the woman, "You will not surely die, for God knows that in the day you eat of it your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." So eating the fruits of the tree that is in the midst of the garden, which can only be the tree of knowledge of good and evil, or the tree of life, will make you like God. That is, it will aid you to realise your own true potential, to realise the God within. This is simply because you'll be eating something that is inside yourself. The world denies us this element of ourself. Our own desires and greedy nature denies us ourself. Ancients tell us in all good faith to eradicate those desires, deny the world its power over us, and to truly find out what lays within. We've either been misled or forgotten how to read the truth. Early Gnostic texts regarded Eve as the serpent herself, guarding the secrets of divine immortality and wisdom. They taught that the Hebrews had regarded Eve with jealousy and stole the creation of mankind from the serpent and attributed it to Yahweh. How right they were, and yet they were called heretics for their statements. At other points in tradition, the Eve myth takes on masculine edge when she is married to Ophion, Peleus, or the Agatha demon, all great serpent deities, and all showing clearly that the fables of Genesis are based upon a serpent cult and the union of the serpentine energies we know as the Kundalini in Hindu tradition. The dual nature of man must reunite in order to be one again within the deity. Eve, of course, must unite with Adam. In the old Akkad tongue, Ad signifies a father, and the mythical personages with whom Adam is most allied, such as Seth or Saturn or Thoth and others, were serpent deities. Adam and Eve are therefore both symbolic serpents of energy within man that must unite in order to bring about the true Son of Man, which is the Christ. Christianity, or more to the point Gnostic Christianity, early on developed this ancient system until the concept of the Holy Trinity was finally written down. This is the Father, which is the male principle, the Mother, the female principle, and the Son of Man, which is the ultimate result of a perfect union. This is why Jesus is God and also the Son of God, because he is the result of the reuniting of the elements of division of the one God. The Bible is a repeating pattern of initiation into the mysteries of the human mind. It is a tool to teach us about ourselves and is, according to most scholarly sources, an accumulation of other wisdom and religious literature from Mesopotamia, Egypt, Persia and elsewhere. It is to some of these other sources that we must now turn to see if the same repeating pattern of psychological and philosophical teaching is to be found. Similar beliefs are shared with the sacred Jewish Torah, the priestly code to be found in the Pentateuch, and said to have been given to Moses by God. This written Torah was said to have passed through the oral Torah first, emerging from darkness. Kabbalists of the 13th century wrote down their understanding of this inner divine in a book we know as the Zohar. The word means radiance, and this is due to the divine light which is the Torah reflected in the mysteries of the Zohar. The literal meaning that people see in the Zohar is darkness. Only by seeing the hidden mystical interpretation will we make a new reading of the Zohar more exciting and revelatory. The tree, seen in the Zohar, is said to produce fruit through the water that God provides. God's water is called Chokmah and means wisdom. It is Sophia, or wisdom, that will enable the tree to bear fruit, which is the soul of a righteous man. Shekinah will only dwell with the righteous, and only through hieros gallus, or holy union of male and female principles, is this possible. The ancient goddess Sophia, who gave her name to the great mosque of Istanbul, is this aspect of wisdom. The female principle is seen on many levels as that of wisdom, and it is symbolized often with water. This is the reason that Mary is often seen on a boat or as a boat, she being the mistress of wisdom and her name meaning water. The boat, as in the symbol of the city of Paris, is also seen with an upright pole, balanced upon the crescent moon-shaped boat. This is the moon aspect of the goddess, the negative or feminine principle. And the pole is originally the tree of Asherah, as we shall see, and who is truly an ancient version of our modern Sophia. It is also the male principle and reveals the divine union. The title of Asherah in Phoenicia, North Africa, is Tanith, meaning serpent lady. She is also known as the Lady of the Serpent. Also in the first millennium BC she was called Chawat, which is basically Hawa in Hebrew and Eve in English. Eve is therefore a remaking of Asherah, the Queen of Heaven and Serpent Lady. We should note that Eve came from Adam, and therefore Adam is El, a consort of Asherah. Asherah is the serpentine or feminine aspect of one of the original versions of the Hindu Kundalini. She appears 40 times in the Hebrew Bible and in 9 books. Asherim, which also appears in the Bible, are actually manufactured wooden poles made to mimic the Asherah trees. One of her symbols is actually 2 entwined serpents upon the Asherah pole or tree of life. Asherah, quite simply, is the female energy on the tree of life, the goddess of life, bearing fruit in the arid desert, sustaining. The goddess in the temple, in our minds and our body, is therefore the element of united wisdom within us. This concept was part and parcel of the Temple of Solomon. It was in the very precincts of that holy place that the religious authorities tried to wipe it out again and again. The Temple of Jerusalem has been built, destroyed, and wait for it. The Jewish and Christian faiths, not to mention the Freemasons, want it building again. Why is this temple so important? And why is it, like the nation of Israel, knocked down and rebuilt so many times throughout the Bible? There are, though, many hundreds of theories about the temple, and we should just consider a few of them. Probably the most interesting in the current climate is the concept that those medieval warrior monks, the Knights Templar, actually dug beneath the temple and discovered some great and tremendous secret. This secret is claimed to be the Ark of the Covenant, the Holy Grail, some incredible and deadly secret texts, or even the head of Christ. As most of the world seems to have gone mad on the Knights Templar, and as they seem to be intricately involved in the whole story of the temple itself, then we'd better spend a few moments considering their role in the history of it. This in itself may lead us into the real secret of the temple. In the 10th century BC, King Solomon the Wise supposedly founded the Temple of Jerusalem, or Solomon's Temple. This was not, as is widely perceived, a Jewish temple. Instead it was a large church of pagan idols. Solomon, according to tradition, had hundreds of wives and hundreds of concubines, all of which came from across the Middle East, and all of which worshipped different gods. All these gods were represented in this great centre of Middle Eastern religion. There is, though, absolutely no evidence from other surrounding nations that any of this happened. However, the story goes that by 587 BC, the armies of Babylon had managed to destroy the temple, leaving the task of rebuilding to those Jews who would return from Babylonian captivity. We would of course do well to remember that Babylon was often used as an allegory for sin, and therefore sin brought down the temple, and those who escaped sin would one day raise it up again. The temple is intricately linked with the now infamous Knights Templar. Indeed, it is the reason for their name. The question has always been, why? What was it that the Templars saw in the Temple of Jerusalem that so inspired them? In the preceding years following the return of certain Templars from the Middle East, we have an upsurge in what is known today as Gothic architecture. Before this period, churches were mainly small and often of wood. Suddenly, with the inspiration gathered from the Middle East, the various monastic orders, and generally led by the Templar-linked Cistercians, Europe was awash with building fever, with over 80 cathedrals being built between 1128 and 1228 in France alone. All of these buildings have or had a Gnostic and mystical influence, with hidden symbolism rife within their stonework, and giving rise to the great Freemasons. It is an accepted fact that the Templars were instigators in the rise of these Masons, and it is the Masons who hid the profound wisdom in the stones. Another amazing coincidence is that suddenly at this time, Europe sees a rise in alchemical, astronomical, medical and philosophical texts, all of this running parallel to each other. The temple then was not made for one god, but for numerous gods, and anybody who wished to worship their own god was in the right place regardless. This was a place of union, a joining of the opposites seen in the Kundalini experience, where the male and female, positive and negative, are joined to bring about true illumination. It was this mystical experience that was at the heart of the Templar attempted revival. This is what the upsurge in alchemical texts speak of. This is what the hidden symbolism of the European churches and cathedrals speaks of. So now we understand the enlightenment or illumination of the mind. This very understanding was then taken further and brought to Europe, where it was physically manifested in the great cathedrals and churches. And all of this from the findings of the Crusaders in the Middle East. This newfound knowledge may very well have come from some of the discoveries made by the Templars, especially when we consider that the man responsible for energising the building programme was none other than St. Bernard. This is the same Bernard who gave the order of the Knights Templar their rules, and who was related by blood to various members. In all likelihood, the new building influence came about through the fresh and invigorating contact with Islamic and Middle Eastern architecture, and the Islamic mathematical advances which had passed Europe by for centuries. The Muslims had two sides, the esoteric and the exoteric, and the buildings of Europe were now somehow matching this hidden path. The Templars now grew in wealth and power, supposedly using their newfound wisdom. Their landholding and banking systems making them one of the most powerful and feared groups in Europe. Virtually nobody could match their international strength. At their trials, the Templars were not only accused of worshipping the sacred head, known today as Baphomet, but also the veneration of the serpent. I was wondering though, whether the Templars had gained insight into the ancient wisdom we have been discussing, and whether they had included some more of the symbolism of that wisdom within their own, such as the serpent, and also whether this had grown so large and popular that it was just too dangerous for the Catholic authorities to accept. It would of course have been an absolute heresy to claim that Jesus was a symbol of the divinity within, and that certain key Catholic doctrines were spuriously literal in the extreme. A symbol seen in various forms from Sumeria to France is the Abraxas, a figure with snakes for legs, a symbol used for gods such as Oannes, and not surprisingly, this later became the symbol of the Grand Master of the Templar Order. What could this mean? The head of the Order of the Templars saw himself as the chief of serpents. The Abraxas reveals a man deity who is empowered by his own balancing of the twin serpents. These are symbols of the mystical knowledge, and the Templars are revealing just what ancient wisdom they had uncovered. These influences must have been picked up whilst the Templars were in the Middle East, and then utilised later on. We must now turn to the builder of the temple, Hiram. Hiram was the son of a Jewish mother and a Phoenician father. He was said to have been the son of a widow of the tribe of Naphtali. There are real links between Hiram and the serpent. For instance, the standard of the tribe of Naphtali, according to Jewish tradition, is a serpent, and this could have come from Egyptian origins, as Jewish tradition states that Naphtali was the brother of Joseph, the chosen one to represent the family to Pharaoh. Hiram is said to be a son of the tribe of Dan, and even the tribe of Dan had an emblem, which was amazingly the serpent. Hiram was credited with certain tools which could pierce stone. Stone is symbolic of wisdom and foundation. Hiram's tool, therefore, could pierce the veil of wisdom. According to the Book of Kings, the temple was built of stone before it was brought to the site. It was said by tradition that neither hammer nor axe nor any tool of iron was used in the building. So how was it built? This in itself is a paradox which can only be answered by the true secret of the temple being revealed. In Exodus, Moses is told, "And if you make me an altar of stone, you shall not build it of hewn stone, for if you use your tool on it, you have profaned it." It seems the same symbolism was utilized here in the building of the temple. According to rabbinical teaching, the prefabrication of the temple was performed by the shamir, a giant worm or serpent that could cut stones. Not dissimilar to Norse and Celtic beliefs, where Valhalla or Camelot were built with the fire of the dragon. The wisdom of the worm, or snake shamir, was used in the construction of the temple. Architect gods, such as Thoth of Egypt, are linked strongly with the serpent wisdom, because they are linked with the building of temples of wisdom inside ourselves. In essence, what we really have here is the temple of wisdom being built by the serpent. Strangely, the name Hiram actually means exalted head of the people, and is closely related to Abraham or Abhiram. Of course, this in itself is a subtle clue to the reality of Solomon's temple, as the exalted head is surely the only element which can make the real temple. It is only the head, raised above all others, which has the wisdom to achieve such an amazing feat. However, we also have another, more telling meaning of Hiram. Ahiram actually means exalted snake. So in either meaning, Hiram was the exalted head or snake, both meanings being paramount to the discovery of the thread of the snake root, and its religious underlying beliefs was great building works were carried out across Europe, all hiding the secret symbolism of the snake, all using the architectural skills discovered whilst on their travels in the Middle East. The brazen pillars of Hiram becoming the twin pillars of the later Masons, who themselves, like Moses, the emergent serpent, emerged from the Templars. And of course, during the Crusader periods, there was not one depiction of the crucifixion on any of the buildings erected, backing up the claim that the Templars denied the crucifixion. It is thought that the Templars and the Cistercians found a wealth of ancient manuscripts containing secrets, giving them an insight into the truth behind Christianity. One thing that did emerge was the cult of the Baphomet head and Sophia, the elements of serpent wisdom. If they had discovered the Holy Grail, as many have said, then the secrets of the Grail were what they truly discovered. So far, we have seen that the true temple must not be touched by hand, that Moses was an emergent serpent from Egypt, and that Hiram, the exalted head or snake, was a master of balance. We've also seen that inside this temple was Asherah, the entwined serpent goddess worshipped across the known world under different guises, and alive and well today in the myths of Mary. We've also seen that a mystical serpent helped in the creation of the temple, and that it was a secret discovered by the Knights Templar, whose very own Grand Master had the symbol of the serpentine Abraxas. But what about the supposed real Temple of Solomon? Did it ever exist? During the period traditionally ascribed to that of King Solomon, namely 1000 to 900 BC, we are specifically talking about the Iron Age. According to Professor James Pritchard, the so-called cities of Megiddo, Giza and Hazor, and Jerusalem itself were in reality more like villages. Within their relatively small public buildings and poorly constructed dwellings with clay floors, the objects reveal a material culture which, even by the standards of the ancient Near East, could not be judged sophisticated or luxurious. The magnificence of the Age of Solomon is parochial and decidedly lackluster, but the first book of Kings implies exactly the opposite. So for there to have been a temple of the magnitude that we are led to believe, then we need an archaeological miracle. We need to uncover a massive edifice with all the surrounding magnificence that is implied. And yet the archaeology reveals villages and poorly constructed dwellings. No wonder that the exact position of the temple is hotly debated. It simply cannot be found. But of course, there is more evidence we can show to prove that the temple was purely a metaphor and in fact never existed in reality. The Temple of Solomon has been called Templi Omnium Hominum Pacis Abbas, meaning the God of the Temple of Peace among men. Shortened down, this reverts to Tem of Ab and reverts backwards to Baphomet. Baphomet, of course, is the head which the Knights Templar were accused of worshipping. Baphe means immersion, as in baptism, and metis means wisdom. Baphomet, therefore, is truly the immersion of oneself in wisdom, the true inner reality and the true and only divinity. It is the true temple. So the Templars were simply accused of worshipping their own head, like the exalted head of Hero, which was nothing more than the immersion in their own inner wisdom. This, of course, is a great heresy, but one that was for some reason allowed to fester and grow, like giving the Templars sufficient rope to hang themselves when the time was right. This is the great secret of the Templars, and one that indicates the truth of the temple, namely, that what they really discovered in that hot, humid country just after the First Crusade could very well have been found back in rainy Europe themselves. To discover how this is so, and for a deeper insight, we need to investigate two main players who supposedly walked the grand corridors of power in the 10th century BC, Solomon and Sheba. Historically, Solomon is supposed to have been a king of Israel, and David's chosen heir. He is said to be the wisest man who ever lived, and authored Ecclesiastes and the Song of Solomon, as well as many proverbs and psalms. Solomon supposedly grew up in a polygamous household with David's 18 wives. His own mother was Bathsheba. Of course, this then is also yet another repetition we have seen again and again in the Bible. Bath is simply house of, and Sheba is Saba, the kingdom of the Sabaeans, the serpent worshippers. So King David married or was in union with the house of Sheba. There are amazingly links here to the tales of King Arthur. David basically took Bathsheba from Uriah and created this saviour King Solomon. In the tales of Arthur, much the same is done when Uther Pendragon takes Igraine from her husband to produce the saviour King Arthur, and all is well in the land. Arthur, of course, then goes on to marry the Queen of Serpents, Guinevere, just as Solomon goes on to marry Sheba, the Queen of the land of serpents. It is a repetitive process of teaching, and in the tales of Arthur, it is a tale that erupted upon the European scene following the Crusades into the Holy Land. But of course, there is absolutely no literal evidence for any of this, other than the biblical and religious texts. There is no hard archaeological or historical evidence for Solomon's existence whatsoever. We must, in this context therefore, take all that is said about King Solomon as if it were purely symbolic, and therefore had other meanings. In this way, the story becomes clear as a teaching of wisdom. The Queen of Sheba is a version quite simply of Asherah, and when she departs from her land to visit the passionate King Solomon, she is entering the temple as the Serpent Queen herself. Sheba came to Solomon when they were equal. She was the Serpent Queen of a serpent land. She was indicative of the Asherah feminine aspect, which we have seen was inside the temple itself, and there is no wonder her story was utilised. When Sheba visited Solomon, she was the peaceful side of ourselves, meeting and balancing the powerful but often fiery side of our internal mind. Together and in balance, both became strong and give us our true self, which is depicted as the Saviour's Son. But the process is repetitive and must be constantly recycled to remain a powerful tool. This is implied when Sheba leaves Solomon. After Sheba's departure, Solomon continues to write wise words, but Israel as a whole deteriorates, just as England loses its fertility when Arthur is split from Guinevere. The tales are the same, and have the same ancient and sacred meaning, that we must work hard to maintain balance or risk losing all. The crowning glory of Solomon's symbolic and wise life, though, was nothing other than the temple, and this was the purpose of our research. The pure fact that the story of Solomon and Sheba are stories of ancient wisdom and psychological teaching leaves us no other option than to see the temple itself as purely symbolic. This secret of the Temple of Solomon was passed into the Freemasons. To most people, the temple is of great importance, but to the Masons it is transcendent. This word means quite simply, to excel above normal human capabilities. That is, the temple hides a deeper meaning for Freemasons than for everybody else, and that meaning is even bigger than the ordinary human reasoning. We are told that in order to build this temple, we must not use might or power, but spirit. How can we build a physical structure with just spirit? We can't, but we can build a spiritual structure with spirit. The true understanding of the Temple of Solomon will come when we understand that at every level of our lives, physical and spiritual, whether coarse or fine, whether related to ourselves or others, what we must always begin with is balance. But each level must be worked on. We must understand that there are elements which cause us suffering, and these appear and reappear, and we must repeat the cycle of eradication if we are to proceed to the next level and be free from the world of desires. Once our mind is free of all the elements which distract us, we will truly shine. Once we understand the true nature of our own interconnectedness to each other and the very universe, then we will have that knowledge or gnosis of the very thing we are aiming for, the truth of ourself.
Like a cool out ball, puts a top like a ball, slide last alone.